Funny about that. You know who was asking about you the other day? Who's that? Nobody.
We talking about sports, get ball.
What it do, baby? Yeah.
What it do, you number one podcast listeners? You've tuned in to a brand new edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, Prem Brulee. I'm your host, Premelbot, and we're trying something a little different here. Calling this episode a quick hitter so I can deliver you number one podcast listeners a few quick takes in a little mini episode. Don't worry, we'll be back with co-hosts regularly, but just wanted to try this method out and see what you number one podcast listeners think. So hopefully you dig this. Let me know, give me your feedback, and without further ado, let's get started on this quick hitter. All right, number one podcast listeners, you know how I like to get started. Yeah, fam or nah. And first up, I did want to talk about the NBA playoffs being in the conference finals, down to the final four teams. And you already know the number one source for hockey news right here.
But hey, as they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
The Stanley Cup playoffs is also down to its final four teams. So obviously by now we all know the four teams competing in the NHL. The Dallas Stars are going to face the Edmonton Oilers, while the Florida Panthers and Carolina Hurricanes are going to face off for a chance to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Over in the NBA, the number one overall seed, the Oklahoma City Thunder, won a 7-game series against the Nuggets. They'll face Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves, who were the 6th seed in the West. Over in the East, it is the New York Knicks, the 3 seed, facing the Indiana Pacers, 4 seed, in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I wanted to talk a little bit to you number one podcast listeners about how interesting this version of these two playoffs are. I got to thinking that these final four teams in each of the sports have very little crossover with the average fan. Basically, the Stanley Cup playoffs are hanging on a thread, hopefully making sure that the Oilers and Connor McDavid make the Stanley Cup finals. Other than that, you have teams that are small market for the sport, and you're not going to have a lot of overlapping fans nationwide for each of these four teams. The Carolina Hurricanes and Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars and Edmonton Oilers are not going to have some broad appeal that some of the bigger franchises would have in the NHL. Same thing in the NBA. I mean, yes, you can look at the New York Knicks being a huge market team and a huge market in general being in New York City, but you don't find too many Knicks fans outside of New York. You don't see the occasional New York Knicks person that didn't originally come from there living where you all live, number one podcast listeners. Obviously, that holds true for Oklahoma City Thunder, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Indiana Pacers. You're not going to see too many Thunder fans outside of Oklahoma City. Obviously, shout out our guy Grant, co-host of Prem Brulee, past co-host, and Game Master Monday's very own. You're not going to see too many Timberwolves fans. Shout out our guy Tom. And same with the Pacers. I got family in Indianapolis, but they're fans of the Pacers because they live there. So you're not going to see too many of these fans outside of those respective cities. So it's really going to test the interest in these sports and the fans of the sports. I think these playoffs are going to be a true test to how far the diehard fan will go and which viewers they can siphon off from the casual fan, because these matchups don't particularly pique the interest of casual observer. You might get them for a little bit, but they're not going to tune in for a whole game. So interested to see what these numbers come back as. Very intriguing matchups on both. Obviously, even though I'm the number one source for hockey news, number one podcast listeners, there's no other place to go for it. Focusing on the NBA side of things, we do have intriguing matchups. The Knicks haven't been to the conference finals in 25 years, and they face a really hot Pacers team that gentlemen swept the number one seed Cleveland Cavaliers. The Timberwolves are scorching hot in the Western Conference, winning both of their first two series in 5 games. and they face a really good Oklahoma City Thunder team. By most people's estimation, are the best team in the league, and their record in the regular season proved that. So very interested to see how these Final Four shake out and who finds their way to compete for the Stanley Cup and the Larry O'Brien Trophy, respectively. Speaking of trophies, number one podcast listeners, you already know who we rock with, who's a Hall of Famer in our book, Magic Mind. You already know how we do. Magic Mind, number one in our book, Hall of Famer in our book. This time, I've talked a lot about referring them to family and friends, and I wouldn't co-sign a product I didn't believe in. You've seen it on video now with me and Thomas. I drink these. I get them regularly, and I think you, number one podcast listeners, should too. But I do want to also talk about how much Magic Mind stands behind their own product. They have a promise to their customers to only use the world's best suppliers. They require rigorous testing of every ingredient sent to them for every production run, and to readily provide certificates of analysis for their ingredients to anyone who requests them. You can send them an email and they'll provide those, no problem. They also promise to inspect every bottle of Magic Mind by hand and to test every batch of Magic Mind that they produce in their lab. Their goal is to make the best beverage on the planet for creators, and they promise to do it the right way for everyone involved, even if it means going above and beyond industry standards. I've talked about this before, but they do have a money back guarantee, refunds for 100% back, no questions asked, without asking for bottles back. You already know, number one podcast listeners, I've been telling you about it for months, probably going on at least a year at this point, but the proof is in the fact that I use it myself and refer it to people I love. You know I wouldn't co-sign it if I didn't believe in its impact, and it's hard not to with them feeling so confident in their ingredients and their money back guarantee. So number one podcast listeners, you already know, got to take care of you guys with that discount. Same as before, magicmind.com/prem. That's magicmind.com/PREM. When prompted, enter that code PREM20, PREM20, and it'll get you 20% off your order. Don't play yourselves. Go get you that discount. And number one podcast listeners, I wouldn't steer you wrong, so don't play yourself. Get on that Magic Mind. Been telling you about it for a long time. Get behind a company that believes in themselves so hard that they are willing to put it in writing, provide you everything that's clean in their ingredients, and ride by quality people and quality podcasts like the number one podcast in your headphones. Magic Mind, don't play yourself. That's magicmind.com/prem and enter the code PREM20 to get up to 20% off your order. Oh, number one podcast listeners, go check out that last episode special link. There might still be some special 40% off codes left. Give it a try. If it doesn't work, they've all been used up, but hey, it's worth a shot if you can get 40% off. That link from the last time was magicmind.com/prem40, and you enter the code PREM40 to get 40% off. Give it a try, see if the link still works, and if not, at least we got 20% off, and that's a hell of a steal already. Speaking of stealing, that's stealing headlines. I gotta quickly talk about the NFL and some off-season news. Obviously, we wrapped up the NFL draft. Could spend a whole episode breaking down all of that. Hope you number one podcast listeners really dug the NFL draft preview with Thomas. It seemed to really be a hit, and especially with the video medium being brand new, I hope to mix those in a lot more. I'm trying to figure out the right mechanism to do that, especially with some out-of-town co-hosts. So stay tuned. I'm definitely wanting to do more because you guys loved it so much on video, and we'll make sure to do that. This is all for you, number one podcast listeners. This is as much your show as it is mine, so want to make sure that we do right by you all.
What it do, baby? Yeah.
Anyway, the NFL also had schedule releases. They make a big thing about schedule releases. There's teams that have creative ways to drop their schedule. It's all a big fam for the NFL. It's a money-making machine. They just print money even around releasing a damn schedule. So let him live. There were some funny ones out there. I'm sure number one podcast listeners have seen him all over social media. But my main thing of note is, for the first time ever, my alleged team, the Dallas Cowboys, will be playing Thursday night games 4 times this season, which is crazy. You already know I don't mind it, because I'd rather know that they're going to lose earlier in the week versus having to wait till Sunday. Why not?
You're great.
And the latest big news, first up, Brock Purdy. The whole reason the Niners shed a bunch of contracts, Thomas and I talked a lot about all the moves they had to make because they knew they had to pay Brock Purdy, and they sure enough did. Brock Purdy signed a 5-year, $265 million contract with the 49ers. So they lock him up as their quarterback of the future. I think he got a no-trade clause in there too. So he's definitely, they're finally committed to him for a large chunk of money. He was grossly underpaid as Mr. Irrelevant for years, so he gets his money. He's going to have to fork over a lot living in Northern California like he lives, but let the man live, got paid, and the Niners definitely had to make some tough decisions to do it, but that's the whole point. If you get a good quarterback, it's quite a privilege to be able to pay players that you drafted yourself. Looking at you, Jerry Jones.
Petty alert, petty alert, petty alert.
And the other bit of news, Dallas Cowboys actually making moves. Haven't got to talk about it, but the Dallas Cowboys completed a trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers, acquiring wide receiver George Pickens in exchange for a 3rd-round pick, essentially. The Cowboys sent a 3rd and a 5th-round pick in exchange for Pickens and a 6th-round pick. So essentially swapped day 3 picks in 2027 and traded Pickens for a 2026 3rd-round pick. Pickens is entering the last year of his rookie deal, so word is that he's going to play on that deal, and it's going to be a prove-it year for him and a fairly low-risk move for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not used to saying this, but it could wildly fail with the big personalities that CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens have, but on the surface, very excited that the Cowboys actually have a second receiver, because I was getting very alarmed that any team would just have to guard or double team CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys would have no answer for it. So love to see it. A little nervous that the Steelers were willing to part with Pickens, but here we are, and we're hoping for the best. Stay tuned for the inevitable Football's Dead episode. You already know.
Petty alert, petty alert, petty alert.
All right, number one podcast listeners, let's hit that You Played Yourself.
I'm petty as hell. And I'm super petty.
Here we
Petty Le Pew.
go.
Okay, first up on You Played Yourself, couple of NBA related You Played Yourselves that need called out since we haven't talked to you, number one podcast listeners. First up, we got to issue You Played Yourself to the Los Angeles Lakers. Everybody thought they were going to do really well. They got gentlemen swept by the Wolves, totally dominated. Nobody's safe from You Played Yourself, so we had to hit him with it. Next up, we got to return him back to this name. It's no longer James Harden. He's back to Jimmy Harden or Jim Harden. I heard this on sports radio. Jim Harden has played 130 playoff games. He's made 4 or fewer field goals in 55 of them. In a whopping 55 of 130 playoff games, he's made fewer than 4 shots. And he did the same thing in the game that eliminated the Clippers. Truly, truly atrocious, and deserves a You Played Yourself. Next up on You Played Yourself, gotta address this one too, the NBA Draft Lottery. The Dallas Mavericks, they won the number 1 pick in the NBA Draft Lottery after having just a 1.8% chance of securing it. They earned the chance to draft clear number 1 pick Cooper Flagg out of Duke. They moved up 10 spots from their projected odds. Worth noting the rest of the top teams. So essentially the lottery, they draft ping pong balls for the top 4 picks and everybody files in after that. So number 2 in the lottery is the San Antonio Spurs. Number 3 is the 76ers out of Philadelphia. And number 4 is the Charlotte Hornets. A extra You Played Yourself to the Jazz and Wizards, who sucked the hardest this past year, only to end up with the 5th and 6th pick, respectively.
So, congratulations. You played yourself.
Listen, number one podcast listeners, I am not a conspiracy theorist, but this is a tough look for the NBA. Right after the Mavericks trade away Luka Doncic, the very ensuing offseason, they land the number 1 pick in the draft lottery. It really seems inevitable that the NBA is going to have to show Ernst & Young drawing the ping pong balls in the NBA draft lottery to stave off this very large feeling as if this thing is rigged. And it's from people like me who are not conspiracy theorists. Just recent examples. In 2010, LeBron James signed with the Miami Heat. The ensuing lottery, the Cavs won the lottery despite having just a 2.8% chance of winning it, getting them Kyrie Irving. Then in 2011, Chris Paul was traded to the Clippers. The Pelicans won the lottery, getting them Anthony Davis. 2019, Anthony Davis was traded to the Lakers. Who do you think won the lottery that very ensuing offseason? The New Orleans Pelicans, who got themselves Zion Williamson despite having just a 6% chance of winning the lottery. All the way to this past year, where Luka Doncic was traded from the Mavs to the Lakers, only to result in the Mavericks winning the draft lottery. That's just recent history. There's countless examples since the turn of the century, at least. A few before that, where small odds have netted teams the top pick despite having questionable circumstances. So You Played Yourself goes to the NBA and their draft lottery system. If you have a few people calling that this was going to happen even after the Doncic trade, and it does come to fruition, it's a tough look. Staying in the NBA, we're the top place for petty here. We can sound it, baby.
Petty alert, petty alert, petty
This
alert.
was from Barry on here on Twitter, or X. This is Steph Curry's career without Kevin Durant.
Who?
2010 missed playoffs. 2011 missed playoffs. 2012 missed playoffs. 2013 lost in second round. 2014 lost in first round. 2015 beat Cavs team missing 2 of its 3 best players for injury ring number 1. 2016 blew 3-1 lead in the NBA Finals. Fast forward to 2020, missed playoffs. 2021, missed playoffs. 2022, beat Denver without Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. They beat Memphis without Ja Morant, on their way to get injury ring number 2. Steph Curry never made a go-ahead shot in the fourth quarter of any win during the playoffs in that season. In 2023, they lost in the second round. In 2024, the Snakes of Oakland missed the playoffs. And this past year, in 2025, they lost in the second round. I don't need to say it, but you played yourself. The Snakes of Oakland and Steph Curry. What, are we supposed to give Curry and the Snakes a pass because they dealt with injury this past year? Are we really supposed to say that Steph Curry's 2 rings didn't have asterisks because of injuries? Like his first of 2 rings didn't face a depleted Cavs roster who started Timofey Mozgov and Matthew Dellavedova?
Who?
Listen, number one podcast listeners, we can hate on anyone. Petty is forever.
Look, I stay petty, so I don't have to get petty.
Okay, number one podcast listeners, I got a special Am I Hatin' for you. I got one of my own, but before I give my Am I Hatin' for this episode, I had number one podcast listener Craig hit me with an Am I Hatin' of his own, so I wanted to drop that because it's poignant after the holiday that we just passed. It's perfect for this one. So, Craig, what's your Am I Hatin', bud?
Yo, what's up, Prem? This is Craig. I got an Am I Hatin' for you. Am I hating to say that we should not be celebrating dog moms on Mother's Day? It's ludicrous to think that parenting a dog requires even remotely the same amount of effort that it does to parent a small child. This has always been a sore subject because in another life I dated this girl who gave me serious attitude for not spoiling her on Mother's Day when she was just a quote-unquote dog mom. Maybe I'm just hating, but I need to get your take on this. Let me know what you think.
Incredible. Listen, Craig has dogs. He's married to someone
What it do, baby?
who is a dog mom. So respect to him for taking that stance that could be subjecting himself to a lot of hate, but not over here. It's a judgment-free zone here. You know, we say statements that are clearly hating, but, you know, this is a safe space. So, Craig, it's a safe space here. Appreciate you providing one. And number one podcast listeners, this is a reminder for you. Be like Craig. Send me some audio. Be featured on Am I Hatin', or you played yourself. Hit me with what's been bugging you, just like Craig did in this episode. A couple ones before, our guy Alex submitted one too. So, number one podcast listeners, I love hearing from you. Hit me with your pet peeves, your Am I Hatins, and they'll be featured here for you, the people. And number one podcast listeners, my Am I Hatin' for this episode, it caused quite a reaction from number one podcast listeners and friends alike on social media, but my Am I Hatin' goes to wearing pajama pants in public. I've been seeing way too much of this. The amount of negative swag, I understand. A lot of people are doing it when they got to run a last second errand or whatever, but can we just upgrade adults to like sweatpants or like plain ones so it doesn't look, we're not wearing this ridiculous pattern out in public? I saw someone walking their dog in pajama pants and bare feet out on the sidewalk, just raw footing, pajama pant out. Like, give me a break, guys. Have some more pride. Throw something on over top of it. Switch out the pants. It's not very hard. Don't look like a bum. And don't even get me started. The people that show up to the airport in pajama pants, adults, we got to stop this. We got to grow up. Upgrade your wardrobes. All right, number one podcast listeners, let's hit that who you got and what you feeling. And you already know this is a professional setup here, so I have to connect my very first Yeah Fam or Nah, the NBA NHL playoffs, which for the record I'm a nah about because, you know, it's a LeBron Ford podcast, so I wanted to see him do better. But I'm going to give you guys my picks for each of the conference finals. You already know it's the number one source for hockey expertise.
Let's do that hockey.
Creme brulee. You don't go anywhere else for your hockey news. So my pick to reach the Stanley Cup Finals, I think the Edmonton Oilers are going to face off against the Florida Panthers for a chance at Lord Stanley's Cup. And I believe it's going to be Thunder versus Knicks in the NBA Finals. Those are my picks to make it to the finals. We'll do actual picks when those series wrap up. But those are my picks for each of the respective conference finals. As for what I'm feeling lately, a little while back, I saw a few movies, the first of which was Sinners. I cannot recommend this movie enough. I will be really disappointed if it's not nominated next year. Ryan Coogler did his thing with this movie. I couldn't believe it. I was so glad that I went and saw it. If you're not a horror movie fan like me, trust me when I tell you it is not that bad. I wouldn't really call it necessarily in that category. So go see it if you haven't already. And I got to go see Thunderbolts, which was a great Marvel movie, the first really good one in a long time. Really enjoyed that one. I think they did a great job with that movie. So it was nice to get back in the swing of the movie things. On a personal note, I got to wish my wife, Steph, a happy Mother's Day. All the moms out there, a happy Mother's Day. I'm feeling a day to recognize them. They deserve it every day, but definitely a special day doesn't hurt for all the special moms in our life. Those of you struggling to become moms, have felt loss, any sort of pain behind Mother's Day, we're with you. Hopefully you have someone in your life that is a good mom that you can recognize on that day. And please know that it will get better. And yes, it sucks right now, but we are all here for you. And you already know I am. If you ever need anything, please reach out. So, but I did want to send a special shout out to those of you who are in the mood to celebrate and did already. A happy Mother's Day to all of you out there, number one podcast listeners that are moms. You guys are the best. And my wife is top of the list for that. So we made sure to spoil her on that day. And we try to recognize her every day, not just on Mother's Day, just like you all deserve. And last but not least, I got to give a special shout out to Prem Brulee co-host Roshan Bhatt. My dude's getting married soon, so I want to give a special shout out to him and his future wife because they deserve it, and can't wait to have him back on here as a married man. But number one podcast listeners, send him and his fiance, soon to be wife, very soon, some love. So that's what I'm feeling lately, and you already know how I like to end each episode with that too much sense. So let's hit it. My too much sense for this episode is a quote I saw. This is from Carl Gustav Jung. He said the following, quote, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do," end quote. I love this. I also phrase this as don't talk about it, be about it. I'm trying to raise my sons to be people of their word. I think your word is one of the few things you have. And if you're someone who's known as being dependable, it is a tremendous quality to have and a tremendous thing to be known for, and something I always strive to do. But your actions speak louder than your words. That's the quote everybody else knows. I just loved how this summed it up. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. I think a lot of people out there talk a big game, but your actions have to back it up, and who you are as a person in the flesh, being present for others, is what matters. So number one podcast listeners, my encouragement to you is to say what you mean and mean what you say, and follow through with what you say. So there's nothing greater than people knowing that they can trust your word because your actions have proved it. So number one podcast listeners, that's my too much sense for this week. And that does it for the quick hitter edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, Prem Brulee. This solo endeavor. I'm trying it out. You number one podcast listeners, chime in. Let me know what you think. I'll do more of these to fill in gaps between episodes because I want to deliver for you all. And if this is something you guys dig, I would love to hear from you, what you like, what you didn't like. And, we make this show for you. So your feedback is imperative. Your listening is everything to me. Number one podcast listeners, I can't thank you enough. The support with the video edition and the NFL draft preview was tremendous. I can't thank you all enough for sharing it, commenting on it, liking it, driving up views. It means the world to me. I promise to deliver on more of those since you guys seem to love it. Please continue sharing, telling a friend to tell a friend. We got another video episode coming out soon, and more to come in the future. So number one podcast listeners, we'll talk to you next time.